Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path leads to a different future. Your 30s are that pivotal juncture, a time when decisions carry weight, and the direction you choose can shape the rest of your life. It's a decade filled with opportunities and challenges where clarity of purpose becomes essential. Success is a deeply personal journey. One of the most common traps people fall into, especially in their 30s, is adopting someone else's definition of success. The world constantly bombards us with signals: the job title we should hold, the amount of money we should earn, the kind of house we should live in, the car we should drive, even how our relationships should look. These are all projections of what society, media, or others expect from us. The problem isn't that these markers exist, it's that too many people pursue them blindly, never stopping to ask, is this what I really want? Pursue a goal that isn't rooted in your own values, you can achieve everything on paper and still feel a void inside. That emptiness doesn't come from failure, it comes from succeeding at the wrong things. I've seen people accumulate wealth, climb the corporate ladder, and achieve external recognition, only to realize they never actually enjoyed the path they were on. They were fulfilling someone else's vision. That's not success, that's drifting. So the first step is radical introspection. You need to develop an honest relationship with yourself. You have to be brutally clear about what matters to you, not what sounds good, not what earns applause, not what your parents or friends think is impressive. What truly resonates with you at the core. Is it building something of your own? Is it creating art? Is it helping others? Maybe it's raising a family or having the freedom to travel and experience the world. There's no universal right answer. There's only the right answer for you. Once you gain that clarity, the next step is alignment. Everything you do, from how you spend your time to the people you associate with, to the risks you're willing to take, needs to align with that definition. That might sound simple, but it's not easy. Real alignment often means letting go of things that look good from the outside. It might mean walking away from a high-paying job that doesn't fulfill you. It might mean disappointing others, but the cost of not aligning your life with your truth is much higher. It's the slow erosion of meaning and the silent regret that builds over time. Clarity of purpose becomes even more critical in your 30s because the stakes are rising. You have more responsibilities. People start depending on you. The margin for error narrows. That's why it's vital to build your foundation on authenticity. When you know your why, the how becomes more manageable. You become more resilient. You're able to withstand pressure because your path is self-conscious. This doesn't mean you shouldn't be ambitious, but ambition, when not grounded in personal meaning, becomes dangerous. It leads to burnout, disillusionment, and in many cases, ethical compromises. Sustainable ambition, the kind that energizes rather than depletes, comes from pursuing something that is a genuine extension of your identity. That's when the process itself becomes rewarding. You're not chasing a finish line, you're building a life. There's another benefit to defining success on your own terms. It simplifies decision-making. You stop chasing every opportunity that comes your way. You start saying no more often. You focus, and over time, that focus compounds. That's how people achieve depth and mastery, not by doing everything, but by doing the right things with consistency and intention. You also stop comparing. Comparison is one of the biggest thieves of peace and productivity. When you measure your progress against others, you ignore context. You don't see their struggles, their trade-offs, their hidden doubts. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. When you're grounded in your own definition of success, that noise fades. You become internally driven, and that internal drive is more durable and more satisfying than any external validation. None of this happens overnight. You have to continuously reflect, course correct, and refine your vision. What you consider success at 30 may look different at 35 or 40. That's natural. The goal is not to lock yourself into a rigid idea, but to stay true to a deeper set of values that guide your evolution. Think of it like having a true north. The terrain will change. The weather may shift, but your direction remains steady. Ultimately, success is about living in alignment with your principles, pursuing goals that matter to you, and building a life that reflects who you are, not who you're supposed to be. The sooner you define that for yourself, the sooner you begin to live intentionally. And that is where the real compounding of success begins. Progress doesn't happen by accident. It comes from understanding how reality works and how to work with it systematically. There's a repeatable process for achieving anything meaningful, and it's built on learning from the patterns that govern success and failure. Whether you're trying to build a career, strengthen relationships, or grow financially, the core steps remain the same. Skip any one of them and the whole system weakens. But if you approach life like a process engineer, breaking it down into stages, identifying what works and what doesn't, adjusting accordingly, you gain leverage over your future. It starts with setting clear, specific goals. Most people have vague ambitions. They say things like, I want to be successful, or I want to be happy. But those statements aren't useful. They lack precision. A real goal defines not just what you want, but why you want it and when you want to achieve it. It becomes a benchmark you can measure progress against. Setting goals forces you to prioritize. You can't go after everything at once. Clear goals create focus, and focus creates momentum. Once you've set a goal, problems will inevitably surface. That's the second step. Recognizing and not tolerating problems. 2, many people ignore problems or rationalize them away. They pretend things are fine when they're not, or they blame others instead of confronting the issue. That avoidance is costly. Every unresolved problem compounds over time, making progress harder. You have to train yourself to see problems as signals. Each one is a data point, an opportunity to learn where the process is breaking down. But you won't fix what you won't face. So it starts with brutal honesty, no sugarcoating. Then comes diagnosis. This is where most people go wrong. They identify symptoms, but not causes. Real diagnosis goes deeper. You don't just ask what happened, you ask why did it happen? You examine your thinking, your behavior, the systems around you. You look for root causes, fundamental weaknesses that led to the breakdown. Maybe you didn't plan well. Maybe you lacked the skills. Maybe you were influenced by the wrong people. Diagnosis is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your own blind spots. But that discomfort is necessary. Without it, you're just treating symptoms, not solving problems. Once you understand the root causes, you move to design. That's where you create solutions, new ways of doing things that prevent the problem from recurring. The key here is creativity grounded in practicality. A good design isn't just a big idea. It's a set of specific actions that are realistic and tailored to your reality. It requires you to think in terms of systems, how the different pieces of your life or work fit together. Sometimes the design means changing your habits. Sometimes it means bringing in people who are stronger where you're weak. It might mean changing your environment or structure. But it always means being intentional. The final step is execution. Ideas mean nothing without execution. You can have a clear goal, diagnose perfectly, and design a brilliant solution. But if you don't follow through, it's all wasted. Execution is where discipline comes in. You must track progress, measure results, and adapt in real time. Things rarely go exactly as planned, and that's okay. What matters is that you're engaged in a feedback loop, acting, observing, learning, adjusting. That loop is what drives continuous improvement. And this process doesn't just apply once. You repeat it. Every meaningful pursuit, every relationship, business, skill will require you to cycle through these steps again and again. Goal, problem, diagnosis, design, execution. It's a loop, not a line. The faster and more honestly you can go through this loop, the faster you'll grow. You stop being reactive and start becoming proactive. You don't get stuck in failure. You learn from it. You don't get complacent in success. You build on it. That's how progress compounds. What makes this approach so powerful is that it creates clarity. Life becomes less about emotion and more about mechanics. You stop getting lost in stories about why something is hard or unfair, and you start focusing on what you can do about it. This mindset is empowering. It puts you in the driver's seat. You stop waiting for things to change and start engineering your outcomes. But here's the catch. It takes humility. You have to be willing to admit when you're wrong, to see your limitations, to face reality even when it hurts. That humility is not weakness, it's strength. It opens the door to learning. When you can say, I don't know, or I need help, you start attracting better people, better ideas, better solutions. You stop pretending to be perfect and start striving to be effective. At its core, this process is about mastery, not of the world, but of yourself. The better you get at navigating this loop, the more you understand what drives outcomes. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it. That's not just achievement, it's evolution. Self-awareness is the foundation of all meaningful growth. If you don't understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your patterns of thought and behavior, you're essentially flying blind. Most people think they know themselves, but they often only see what they want to see. They focus on their intentions rather than the outcomes of their actions. They judge others by their behavior and themselves by their motives. That kind of thinking creates blind spots, and blind spots are dangerous because you don't see the mistakes coming until they've already happened. The real problem is that your mind plays tricks on you. It filters information based on biases you don't even know you have. It convinces you that you're being objective when you're actually rationalizing. That's why cultivating self-awareness requires deliberate work. It's not just about reflection. It's about honest feedback, data, and external perspective. You have to be willing to see yourself through a different lens, and that takes humility. One of the most powerful tools for gaining self-awareness is pain. Pain is a signal. It shows up when there's a gap between reality and your expectations. Most people try to avoid pain, suppress it, or blame it on others. But if you treat pain like feedback, it becomes a teacher. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That shift is critical. Every painful experience carries a lesson about what you missed, where you were naive, or how you misjudged a situation. If you lean into it instead of running from it, you'll learn faster and go farther. But you can't rely only on your internal lens. No matter how introspective you are, you'll always have blind spots. That's why seeking diverse perspectives is not optional. It's essential. Other people see things you don't. They've lived different experiences, made different mistakes, asked different questions. When you surround yourself with people who think differently and you actually listen to them, you expose yourself to new patterns of thought. That exposure stretches you. It challenges your assumptions and forces you to refine your thinking. The mistake many people make is only seeking perspectives that validate what they already believe. That's comfortable, but it's not growth. Real growth comes from tension, from respectful disagreement, from thoughtful debate, from people pointing out where your logic breaks down or where your behavior doesn't match your principles. If you can find people who are both honest and capable, who care enough to challenge you and are smart enough to do it well, those relationships are invaluable. But for those relationships to work, you need to create an environment of radical transparency and radical honesty. That means you have to be open about your own mistakes and invite criticism instead of deflecting it. You have to reward truth-telling even when it's uncomfortable. When people know they can be honest with you without being punished, they'll tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. That's where the real insights come from. You also need to understand your own wiring. Everyone has different inclinations, emotional triggers, and cognitive biases. Some people are naturally optimistic. Others are cautious. Some overestimate their abilities. Others underestimate. There's no right or wrong style, but there is value in knowing your style. That way, you can build complementary relationships. If you're a visionary thinker, you may need someone who's more detail-oriented. If you move fast, you may need someone who slows things down and evaluates risk. The goal isn't to change who you are. It's to design around your strengths and compensate for your weaknesses. This is not about being perfect. It's about being effective. Perfection is a myth, but progress is real. And progress starts with clarity. The more clearly you see yourself, the better decisions you'll make. You'll know when to push forward and when to pause. You'll recognize patterns before they become problems. You'll stop repeating the same mistakes because you'll understand what caused them in the first place. Over time, cultivating self-awareness and embracing diverse perspectives becomes a feedback loop. You reflect, you get input, you adjust, you grow, that growth compounds. You start attracting better collaborators. You develop sharper instincts. You build deeper trust with others. And ultimately, you become more capable of navigating complexity, not because you have all the answers, but because you've built a system that constantly improves your thinking. If you're serious about evolving, you need to make this a habit, not a one-time effort, but a continual practice. Self-awareness isn't a destination. It's a tool you use every day. When you combine it with the discipline of listening to other minds, you create something rare, a way of living that's anchored in truth, built on learning, and designed for growth. That's how you move from guessing to knowing, from reacting to leading. Most people don't take money seriously until it becomes a problem. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, especially in your 30s. This is the decade when your financial decisions start compounding in a meaningful way. What you do now with your money, how you save it, spend it, invest it, protect it, will define the options you have for the rest of your life. If you approach it reactively, you'll find yourself trapped. If you approach it strategically, you'll create freedom. Financial prudence and smart diversification aren't just tactics. They're essential principles for long-term security and growth. Financial prudence starts with one simple truth: live below your means. That doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy life or treat yourself occasionally, but it does mean that your lifestyle should always lag behind your income. Most people do the opposite. They increase spending. As soon as they start making more, they buy liabilities instead of assets. They confuse appearance with wealth. But real wealth is quiet. It's not the car you drive or the watch on your wrist. It's having enough reserves to withstand shocks, make good decisions under pressure, and take calculated risks when opportunity appears. Prudence is about managing downside before chasing upside. Too many people ignore risk until they get hit. One financial emergency, a job loss, medical bill, or unexpected event can wipe out years of progress if you're not prepared. That's why your first priority should be building a cushion. A well-funded emergency reserve gives you the space to think clearly and act from strength instead of desperation. It's not just financial insurance, it's psychological stability. Beyond the basics of saving, the way you invest matters just as much, and that's where diversification comes in. The future is inherently uncertain. No matter how smart you are, how much research you've done, or how confident you feel, you will not always be right. Markets change, cycles shift, and black swan events do happen. The key isn't predicting the future, it's preparing for a range of possible outcomes. Diversification is how you protect yourself from the unknown. And that means not putting all your money into one stock, one business, one asset class, or one country. It means spreading your exposure across different types of investments that behave differently under different conditions. When you build a portfolio that includes equities, bonds, real assets, and perhaps even some alternative strategies, you reduce your vulnerability to any single point of failure. You don't need everything to go right. You just need to avoid the big losses that derail long-term compounding. But diversification isn't just about asset classes. It applies to income too. Relying on a single source of income, no matter how stable it seems, is risky. The job you think is secure today might not exist in 5 years. That's why developing multiple income streams, even if they start small, is a smart move. It could be a side business, investments that generate passive income, or skills that give you the flexibility to pivot if needed. The goal is resilience. You want to be in a position where you don't depend on any one source of financial stability. Another important piece is understanding your own psychology when it comes to money. Fear and greed are powerful forces. They cloud judgment, lead to impulsive decisions, and often result in buying high and selling low. You have to know your emotional tendencies and design systems to manage them. That might mean automating your savings and investments, setting rules for when to rebalance your portfolio, or simply creating a long-term plan and sticking to it through short-term noise. Discipline beats impulse over time. A lot of people overcomplicate this. They chase the latest hot trend, try to time markets, or follow speculative advice from unqualified sources. But wealth isn't built on excitement. It's built on consistency. It's about doing the boring things well repeatedly over time, saving a percentage of every paycheck, avoiding consumer debt, investing in low-cost diversified vehicles, rebalancing periodically, letting compound interest do its work without interrupting it. These aren't exciting moves, but they're the ones that work. Eventually, as your financial base grows, you'll have the ability to take more intelligent risks. You can invest in startups, real estate, or ideas you believe in, not out of desperation, but from a position of strength. You can afford to be patient. You can play the long game, and the long game is where real wealth is created. So start early, be intentional, question every dollar, build safety nets, diversify intelligently, understand your behavior, because money, when handled well, is a tool, not just for survival, but for freedom, flexibility, and the ability to shape your own future. If you get this part right, everything else becomes easier, not because money solves all problems, but because it removes unnecessary constraints, and that's what gives you room to truly live. At the end of the day, life is not about how much you accumulate. It's about the quality of your experiences and the depth of your relationships. Too often, people sacrifice connection and presence for achievement. They chase goals relentlessly and tell themselves they'll make time for people and experiences later. But later is a fragile plan. Time passes quickly, and the moments you miss don't come back. If you wait too long to value what really matters, you'll look back and wonder why you work so hard for things that feel hollow. It's easy to get caught in the trap of thinking life is a game of wins and losses, that your worth is measured by your productivity or your net worth. But those are metrics of output, not fulfillment. Real success is about living well, and that starts with how you treat people and how present you are in your own life. The most valuable currency you have is attention. Wherever you put it consistently is what grows. So if your attention is always on your next deal, your next move, your next goal, then your relationships will weaken and your experiences will dull. You'll find yourself surrounded by accomplishments, but emotionally bankrupt. Relationships are your most important assets, not in a transactional way, but in the sense that the people around you shape your thinking, influence your emotional state, and determine your capacity for growth. If you surround yourself with people who challenge you constructively, who support you during failure, who celebrate your wins without resentment, that's when you accelerate. Those relationships become a mirror and a compass. They show you who you are and help you course correct when you drift. But building meaningful relationships takes effort. It requires vulnerability, honesty, time, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations. It means choosing truth over harmony when needed. It means investing in people, not just when things are going well, but when they're falling apart. You can't fake connection. You have to earn it through consistency and trust. And the deeper those connections go, the more resilient you become, not just personally, but professionally. Because when things get hard, and they always do, it's not just strategy or intelligence that carries you through. It's people. And then there's experience, the actual living of life, not the resume version, not the Instagram version, the real thing. Being in places that humble you, doing things that push you, having moments that imprint themselves so deeply that you carry them for the rest of your life. Those are the returns that matter. You remember the conversations on long walks more than the metrics in a quarterly report. You remember the trip where everything went wrong, but brought you closer to someone. You remember the moments when you felt fully alive, fully present. If you don't make space for those things, life becomes a checklist. You're always optimizing, but rarely experiencing. You'll look up one day and realize you climbed a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. That kind of regret can't be solved by more success. It can only be avoided by being intentional now. So prioritize experiences that stretch you, that teach you, that change your perspective. Spend money on things that create memories, not just impressions. Choose depth over novelty. Slow down enough to appreciate small moments. If you're always rushing, you miss the richness in the details, the nuance in a conversation, the beauty in the mundane, the insight that comes in silence. Presence is underrated, but it's the only way to actually live instead of just passing through time. And don't forget that the most meaningful experiences often come from service, from helping others, from mentoring, from lifting someone when they're down. There's a different kind of fulfillment that comes from contributing to something larger than yourself. It builds inner wealth, the kind that's not tied to market cycles or job titles. It gives you peace when things go sideways and perspective when things go well. In the end, life is a portfolio too. But it's not just a portfolio of financial assets. It's a portfolio of memories, relationships, and moments that shaped who you are. If you're only managing your money and not your life, you're leaving too much on the table. The goal is not just to succeed, but to live fully, to be present, to be connected, to be proud of not just what you built, but how you lived while building it. Your 30S are not just a decade, they're a defining chapter in your life story. By introspecting to define success, embracing a structured approach to challenges, cultivating self-awareness, practicing financial prudence, and valuing relationships, you set the stage for a life of purpose and fulfillment. Remember, the choices you make today are the building blocks of your future. Choose wisely.